there, being, and the other about language and like knowledge. So I guess it's the same, like the same thing with this dichotomy between consciousness and the real world. So the real world is and language, they're like they're kind of in the same dimension, but it's kind of different stuff. Since we can't find soul, we can't find language, we can't find where it exists, and is it in the brain or is it in the body. But in general, it's very hard to actually tell how I reached this conclusion. I wouldn't claim, like, I'm not going to become a dogmatist and claim that this is true. I assert that. But for me, it seems, that after this 20, 30 hours of studying the concept, what they're talking about mostly
so your claim is that consciousness is language, right?
Yes.
And is that something that is also supported in the lecture that you share with me?
Well, no, the lecture is mostly scientific, and there's, again, this distinction between ontology and epistemology and subjective and objective senses. So, for example, there's ontological statement like and subjective and objective ontological statement. So as an objective ontological statement, it's something like like this mountain, like Everest. This is the Everest. The Everest is, exists. It may be an objective ontological statement. And subjective ontological statement, it's so it's about things which are independent from an observer. And the subjective ontological statements, they are about your feelings. So if I say, for example, let me think for a while. So feelings. I think Everest is huge.
Okay.
So this is my way of, or I think this girl is beautiful, for example.
Okay.
So it's just ontologically subjective. Since there's a girl, and my feelings and my thoughts about her, they're like, it's just my feelings. No, and they're not like, they're real since I am real, but it's hard to tell whether or not they're objective. So they're subjective. And the same with epistemology. For example, there are facts like whatever, like World War II ended at 9 May 1945.
Right.
And we may say it's epistemologically objective. But my estimation or my claim about something, I guess the first example about the girl, it was more about epistemology, not ontology. So if I say like this girl is beautiful, it's my knowledge about this girl, and it's epistemologically subjective.
Right.
But ontologically subjective, it's just feelings. So I have some feelings, and they exist only in my reality, since you can't feel what I feel. So it's not real objects. And he talks about consciousness, saying that, this artificial consciousness or artificial intelligence. So they're talking about consciousness in a wrong sense. They want to create something that is ontologically subjective. See, consciousness itself is ontologically subjective, since what I experience, what I see, it's only my perception of the reality.
Okay.
And and there's a difference between semantics and syntax. And computers, they may understand semantics or syntax. They may understand syntax, so they may operate with language. They may compute, calculate very quickly. But they have no they have no semantics. They have no understanding of semantics, and it's like what he claims in the lecture, that we haven't even started yet like making something that may understand semantics. So we may build computers who may calculate and give certain, we may give it a text, and there's some story, and a computer we may ask a question about this text, and computer may give sensible answers, like meaningful answers. But it doesn't mean that computer can understand the story. It just learns how to deal with the language, with syntax, with words. But to understand it, yes, it doesn't understand it. It can't understand it. That's
I don't fully understand why the computer can't. So the computer understands the syntax, but not the semantics. Is that it?
Yeah, it operates only with syntax and not with the semantics.
So what's the difference between the syntax and the semantic? What's the fundamental difference between one and the other?
Well, syntax, it's just the order of words in a sentence, and semantics, it's like your. Like when I say some sentence, for example, let me think. Like, I may use certain intonation and say, like, this girl is so beautiful, right? But I may mean that she's not beautiful, but she's ugly. But I use kind of sarcasm and
right.
And you can understand me, since you may just understand what I say, and you may understand in a broad context. But for a computer, so you say something like that, and it takes everything literally.
Oh, okay, I guess. So the computer doesn't take into context. He doesn't take. The computer doesn't take context into the equation.
It takes context, but it's again it interprets everything like literally. So for a computer, just it may manipulate words and sentences, but it can't really understand. It can't have experience. It doesn't have imagination. It can't imagine, like, that one and the same thing, one and the same sentence may mean different things for different people. So it basically doesn't have its own mind.
Right. Yeah. Unless,
And the mind, this, my final conclusion was about the mind. But actually, it's And what I get, like my realization was that, there's no difference. We also don't have our minds. So we are like computers, but we believe that we have minds, and that these minds, like, we can understand semantics. But
you're going down the rabbit hole.
Well, eventually, it's like the mind is language. So, and that's why you can find it anywhere, since like we started making up this. It's just all semantics. It's like we make statements about the world, and these statements create a kind of new world. It's not real world. It's just a world like of our understanding of the world. And eventually, we make up like kind of. So there's so much in our language which actually doesn't exist in the real world, but we still can understand. We may just write some fictions and make some stories which become part of our world, even though they're not real. Like they do not exist in the real world.
It would be interesting to have another species that is intelligent, that we can talk to. And it would be interesting to compare if a lot of these things that we produce are just human, or they're part of reality, right? Even though they're not physical, they're still part of reality. Or if they're just human, like another species might not see things in the same way. You know what I mean? Perhaps that's just our human form of processing information.
It's like you just interpret the world.
It's just how
through our brains. But
right,
we may imagine something like a different brain, right?
Exactly. So if there is a completely different brain, maybe some of these things are just, we would find out that these things are just brain specific, right?
Yeah, it's like imagine a
Maybe,
brain which has
maybe beauty, like something like beauty, which is so fundamental to us, beauty is perhaps one of the most important things that we consider as humans, because like from the beginning we're babies and children, and we see things are either they're beautiful or ugly, or in between, obviously. But maybe that's not a real thing, you know what I mean? Maybe that's
mhm.
maybe that's
Does
not a
may
real
that
thing.
yeah
Maybe that's
it
not a
may
real thing in the universe. Maybe that's a human thing, that we consider things to be beautiful or ugly. I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
mhm.
And I don't think we can really know unless we encountered an intelligent species. So we could
And well,
compare.
and they
Because how can we say, how can we
yeah,
find out if something
and
is
the,
beautiful or not? We can't find out. The only way to compare is with another human. So it's impossible to find out.
yeah, but among us we know like what is beauty, right? But when there's another species, they if they don't have this concept of beauty, it will be impossible even to explain them what we mean.
I know, but at least we'll know that this is something
Mm.
ours, that it's not a part of the universe. That's what maybe we'll say, look at how beautiful this painting is. And they simply won't understand, what we mean.
It's all subjective, right? It's again like beauty.
Yeah, because there is a subjective element to it. But at the same time, all humans consider things beautiful, you know. There are variations, obviously, but yeah, everybody looks at the Sistine Chapel and we think, well, this is very nice looking, like there's a sort of a universal aspect to it.
Mhm.
But it might perfectly be associated with our own specific brains.
It all relates to our senses. So where's beauty? It's like how you see things, how you taste it, how you smell it, whatever. And if imagine that some other species may have like 50 senses. So for
Yeah,
them, the concept of beauty will be totally different since they
right.
have like they perceive the world through different, different senses. And eventually, imagine like
And it could be even like more radical. They could even not understand what is beautiful and ugly. For them, they could just see things in a different way.
just
Because
different words. Like in Russia, for example, we have the word красивая или красивый. So you don't know what it is, right?
no,
But it's the same word for beauty, basically. Beautiful in Russian красивый или красивая, depending on the gender.
but it's the same thing, right? It's the same.
Yeah, but they may have they like this species may have this word, and and we'll argue like whether it means like the same like beauty, or it means something different, or it means like more complex phenomenon. And yeah, it's
having a different species would give a lot of more material to philosophers.
yeah, eventually we go to war and kill each other, either they us or we them. Since,
Probably,
we'll
probably.
disagree. We'll disagree about beauty, and that's gonna start.
It will be like Starship Troopers, that movie or book. Have you seen it, or have you read it?
Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably seen, but I don't. If you remind me what was there, I'll probably.
So it's from I haven't read the book. The book is, I think, kind of a classic in science fiction, but I haven't read it. I've seen the movie, which is kind of I mean, I guess you could say it's kind of a classic as well. I think it's from the 90s.
Yeah, I probably
And
watched it. There's some in the end. There's some monster,
it's
and
it's so basically the premise is that the world is kind of united at that point.
uh-huh.
We have a world government
against like these animals, these
yeah,
creatures.
because we get invaded by another species.
Yeah, and
And
then they send the ship in the space, and some people die there, right?
well,
But
they're like bugs, super bugs.
yeah, I watched this movie. Yeah. In the end,
Yeah,
they're in a bunker and they're attacked by these bugs, and they try to try
yeah,
to survive, but only a few of them survive in the end.
yeah. I don't remember like all the specifics, but it's a great movie though. It's a great movie. It's yeah, I mean,
No,
that scenario is like what you're describing. You know, we encounter another intelligent species and we just decide that we're gonna destroy each other. Either one or the other species will survive, I guess. So that would be a sad turn of events. But
have you ever played StarCraft?
um, I don't think I've ever played it. I mean, I certainly I'm familiar with it. I don't think I actually played it. No.
But there's race
Yeah, I know
Zergs,
there. Yeah,
Zergs, and Zergs are this in Starship Troopers. I guess they
okay, yeah, it's based
they
on that. Yeah, I think so.
represent the same race, the same
I've
idea.
read about it. I've read about it, and I've kind of like looked at videos and stuff.
Yeah, and I was playing for Zergs for a couple of years. Like, I mean, I was kind of not professional, but I devoted a lot of time playing in StarCraft, and Zergs was my favorite race, and I knew like it was the first StarCraft, not the second, like 2003, 2000.
Yeah, I don't think I got into
2003.
StarCraft. I mean, I used to play Warcraft, which is like the sister game.
Yeah, I played Warcraft as well, like Frozen Throne.
Yeah.
You know, it also, and also I've played in BattleNet. Have you played BattleNet? In BattleNet?
No, I mean I've played. I'm sure I've played
Oh,
it
yeah.
casually.
Okay.
You know, just
Yeah,
with myself and just I liked it. I like Warcraft, but I wasn't serious about it.
Yeah, I played 2000 like 500 games on BattleNet in Warcraft. Yeah, I got like some high status and played with champions.
Yeah, I've played like 10, so against the computer.
Yeah.
So, completely different level. But anyways, do you want to read a little bit about this
Yeah, let's go and
all right.
read Skeptics. I actually already prepared a little bit. I reread the previous 3 chapters which we read together last week.
Okay.
You know, I wanted, like, I study also the vocabularies, and some words for me are new here and I want to understand them better, so I write some things down. And you know, this idea of tolerance, yeah, yesterday I was doing this studying words, like different words, and I discovered this word tolerance, and I knew it before. I mean, it's like nothing special, but then I read the definition and I realized that this is almost exactly how I feel about skepticism. So how, like, and tolerance, it also meant endurance. Like the original term, it was from Latin and it meant endurance.
Okay.
And it's kind of interesting way of looking at it. Like, it's not just about tolerance when you are tolerant about other people's opinions, but when you just develop some kind of thick skin and you are kind of immune from all this, you know, all this propaganda, ideologies, all this stuff, because you kind of, you know, you learn to understand their basic principles, and they're not you're not affected by them, so you're not, well, how to put it.
No, I get what you're saying though. I get what
you're immune, and you basically may, you know,
right. They have some
ignore them.
Yeah.
Not follow a victim and, you know, go around and try to teach everybody, or, you know, persuade people to do certain things. Like,
you know, I think this this kind of like the skeptic point of view of, you know, not accepting dogmas, right, or always being distrustful of dogmas. I've kind of, well, and we're kind of like still in the beginning here, but I've been trying to think that way. I've been trying to think that way, you know, and you know, like I've been studying and stuff, so, you know, I've been trying to think in a way that, in a skeptic way, trying to avoid dogmas, understanding positions, but trying to detach myself from the positions, just trying to consider which position is better or worse, but in a as detached way as possible.
Yeah, you in the end, you basically just say what you know based on, if you talk, last time we discussed World War II, and I think we may use this example. So you say, for example, when you have a conversation about World War II, you don't claim that this is true or this is not true. You say, okay, I've read like this book. The guy said this, and this is what I know. This is how I know that. And I read another book, and another guy said that. So there's like I'm not saying that something happened, and I believe that this was truth, and this is the only truth. I just say that this is how I got this information, and this is how I may interpret it. But whether or not it's true, I don't care. I mean,
Right. I mean, there aren't that many absolute truths in the world. A lot of it is kind of open to interpretation a little bit. So, certainly in history, a lot of it is open to interpretation.
Yeah, but see, the problem arises when you believe in something and then you forget about the origin of your belief, of your knowledge, and you just start saying that, this is true, and then you look for evidence and try to prove that this is true, even though it's like it was some knowledge which first appeared from some source.
Right. Yeah.
So here you basically, you like the goal, I guess, for the skeptic is not only like seeking these counter examples, but also being able to understand where these opinions and ideas which the skeptic has came from.
Where they came from.
So whenever you claim something, you have to be able to track back your experience in reading, watching something, and say, oh, it's like now I have this opinion, but this opinion is formed on somebody else's report. So when it refers to something that is not evident, of course, when we talk about nature and about reality and about our personal experience, so you basically say what you experience. But when we discuss something that is not evident, like events which happened 100 years ago, or maybe some scientific theories which try to make us believe that certain things are true and other things are false. So basically, okay, this is the statement. I understand the statement. It may be true, it may be false. But if there's no evidence, I can't just say that, I believe in it and this is absolute truth. Anyway, are we going to read the 10th chapter like we did last time? I mean,
sure, we can, or maybe we can go to the 11th. What do you say?
Okay, let's. I've read already, like as I said before we started. I've read for last.
Let's do this. The criterion of the skeptic way. That we hold to the appearances is obvious from what we say about the criterion of the skeptic way. The word criterion is used in two ways. First, for the criterion that is assumed in connection with belief about existence or non-existence, and that we shall discuss in our objections. And second, for the criterion of action, by attention to which, in the conduct of daily life, we do some things and not others. It is of the latter that we are now speaking. Accordingly, we say that the criterion of the skeptic way is the appearance, in effect using that term here for the fantasia, for since this appearance lies in feeling and involuntary in pathos, it is not open to question. Thus, nobody, I think, disputes about whether the external object appears this way or that, but rather about whether it is such as it appears to be. Holding to the appearances, then, we live without beliefs, but in accord with the ordinary regimen of life, since we cannot be wholly inactive. And this ordinary regimen of life seems to be fourfold. One part has to do with the guidance of nature, another with the compulsion of the pate, another with the handing down of laws and customs, and a fourth with instruction in arts and crafts. Nature's guidance is that by which we are naturally capable of sensation and thought. Compulsion of the pate is that by which hunger drives us to food and thirst makes us drink. The handing down of customs and laws is that by which we accept that piety in the conduct of life is good and impiety bad, and instruction in arts and crafts is that by which we are not inactive in whichever of these we acquire. And we say all these things without belief. All right.
So let's try to make sense of it.
Okay. This is difficult.
Yeah, let's just go slowly, sentence after sentence, like from the beginning.
Okay.
So we hold to the appearances is obvious from what we say about the criterion of the skeptic way. Criterion, is it right pronunciation? Criterion, right?
Criterion, yeah.
Criterion.
There's even a.
All right.
No, I was gonna say that there's a movie. It's called the Criterion Channel.
Mm-hmm.
Not a movie, sorry. One of those streaming services.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called the Criterion Channel, and it's about movies. They have all these kinds of movies, like old movies and like classical movies.
Yeah, I used to pronounce it like criteria, like since in Russia it's criteria, and now okay, criteria.
In Latin languages as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's pronounced, but in English they pronounce it criterion.
Okay, so appearances is obvious. Yeah, appearances. Let's clarify the meaning of appearances. So appearance is basically everything that appears to our senses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like what we may see, what we may touch, what we may smell.
Mm-hmm.
The word criterion is used in two ways. First, for the criterion that is assumed in connection with belief about existence or non-existence.
Mm-hmm.
Assumed in connection with belief about existence and non-existence, and that we shall discuss in our objections. And the second for the criterion of action, by attention to which in the content of daily life we do some things and not others. Okay, beliefs and actions, right? So there's like two different meanings. Let's try to make some examples to understand better what he means.
I think it's a little bit difficult to understand because this is a translation, and maybe in Greek it was a little bit more obvious.
Yeah, but still, we may try. So, used in two ways. Let me read it once again. For the criterion that it, like I do in my study.
I think it's hard. I think it's hard because it's he probably means something a little bit more intuitive in Greek, and we have to understand like what he means as well. It's like almost we're learning a little bit of Greek here.
Yeah, but when I do my study in stream, so I basically go like sentence after sentence, and I may read it like 3, 4, 5 times unless I have something to say about it, like some examples, or I can understand it and put it in my own words.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's almost like reading this is almost like reading two different languages. You're reading Greek and you're reading English, so it's.
Yeah, but there's like syntax, and again, syntax and semantics, right? So there's we understand language, we try to interpret it in like using the syntax, but we can't actually have the direct understanding of its semantics. Since he used words which he had some experiences which aren't available for us now.
Yeah,
there were some examples, there were some probably famous things which now we can't even understand.
Well, I mean, criterion is hard to understand because criterion.
Well,
it's not a normal word. Criterion is not normal, like it's not a commonly used word.
Well,
so we have to understand that it's helpful that he tries to explain to us what he means.
No, I think criterion. So, well, at least as far as I can tell.
In common usage, criterion is something a little bit more straightforward, right? Criterion is kind of like a reason.
Yeah.
What he's using it for is a little bit more complicated than that, I think.
Let's just read the definition of criterion.
Yeah.
A standard that you use to judge something or make a decision about something. So a standard, right?
Yeah, standard is a better word to describe it, yeah.
Yeah. So but we may still use criterion, but mean like standard.
Yeah.
That's trying to stick to the original language. So the word criterion is used in two ways. First, for the criterion that is assumed in connection with belief about existence and non-existence. Okay, certain standards about your knowledge, and the action. I think he means exactly this distinction between like what's going on, what you may perceive, and a belief that you have about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
The second, for the criterion of action by attention to which in the conduct of daily life we do some things and not others. But again, it's also kind of belief, right? So why do you study language, for example? Or why do we make this podcast? So there are we have certain standards and certain beliefs about it. And what's the difference? Like, okay, existence, non-existence, it's like some fears.
I don't know. I'm a little bit.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
go on, and probably it's going to be clearer. Like, accordingly, we say that the criterion of the skeptic way is the appearance. In effect, using that term for the fantasia. For since this appearance lies in feeling and involuntary, how to pronounce it?
Involuntary.
Involuntary pathos, it is not open to question.
Yeah, because voluntary is doing something when you want to do something. So
Yeah, it's like
involuntary is simply the opposite.
Yeah, I understand the meaning, but pronunciation.
Yeah.
So accordingly, we say that the criterion of skeptic way is the appearance. So for a skeptic, like standard, like they judge or make judgments. If they don't actually make judgments, but if they use criterion like according to appearance, something that appears. So it's not about something that you may think or that you may construct by some logical methods, but something that you have direct access through your senses. For since the appearance lies in feeling and involuntary pathos, it is open to question. But it's open to question, like what he wants to say here. Accordingly, we say that the criterion of the skeptic way is wait, the appearance. In effect, using that term here for the fantasia. For since this appearance lies in feeling and involuntary pathos, it is not open to question. Okay, it's not. So appearance is not open to question, but the judgment about the appearance, that's what like they argue about. So they don't deny the existence of things, but they deny the different types of interpretation.
Yeah, it's the appearance. Yeah, and I mean it's yeah, it's a little bit tricky. It's a little bit tricky to understand exactly what he means.
Yeah, well, we don't need to understand exactly. We just
Yeah.
need to understand how we can understand it, like trying to interpret it in our way. Like,
Yeah, well, it seems that he's focused. I think this last paragraph here is kind of he's like building up to what he wants to say here at the end. That's my impression.
wait, let read this. Thus, nobody, I think, disputes about whether the external object appears this way or that, but rather about whether it is such as it appears to be. Okay, the distinction, I guess we may use Kantian terminology of nomenon and phenomenon.
Does nobody, I think, disputes about whether I think he's saying that we all see things the same way, but then we interpret them differently. Don't you think that's what he's saying?
This nobody, I think, disputes about whether the external object appears this or that way, but rather about whether it is such. Yeah, I agree. So it's like whatever I perceive something, but what exactly it is, I can't tell with certainty, since you may perceive the same thing and it may be different for you.
Yeah. So then he says, holding to the appearances, then we live without beliefs, but in accord with the ordinary regimen of life, since we cannot be wholly inactive. That I'm not sure what he means. And this ordinary regimen of life seems to be fourfold. But here, I think he's talking about like what life sort of like
So what
dividing the aspects of life, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it's very hard if you try to live accordingly with the theory of skepticism. So if you try to practice skepticism, there's basically no there's no way how you can say that like what you're doing, like what's the purpose of existence, what's the purpose of your actions, why you do this thing and not that thing, since you always have to give some reasons. If I ask you like why do you do something, you always find some reasons. But for a skeptic, he can't say that I do something because of that, because like one reason, since like he doesn't believe himself in anything.
right? Yeah. Do you wanna read this section? What is the goal of skepticism? Or do you want to leave it for next week?
Yeah. No, let's do this one.
Okay. After these remarks, our next task is to explain the goal. Let's see, maybe here it'll become a little bit more clear. After these remarks, our next task is to explain the goal of the skeptic way. Now, the goal or end is that for the sake of which everything is done or considered, while it in turn is not done or considered for the sake of anything else, or it is the ultimate object of the desires. We always say that as regards belief, the skeptic's goal is ataraxia. And that as regards things that are unavoidable, it is having moderate pate. For when the skeptic set out to philosophize with the aim of assessing his fantasiae, that is, of determining which are true and which are false so as to achieve ataraxia, he landed in a controversy between positions of equal strength. And being unable to resolve it, he suspended judgment. But while he was thus suspending judgment there, followed by chance, the sought after ataraxia as regards belief. For the person who believes that something is by nature good or bad is constantly upset. When he does not possess the things that seem to be good, he thinks he's being tormented by things that are by nature bad, and he chases after the things he supposes to be good. Then when he gets these, he fails into still more torments because of irrational and immoderate exultation, and fearing any change, he does absolutely everything in order not to lose the things that seem to him good. But the person who takes no position, this is the skeptic, as to what is by nature good or bad, neither avoids nor pursues intensely. As a result, he achieves ataraxia. Right, so I think this is kind of like the key here.
Mm-hmm.
The person who takes no position as to what is by nature good or bad neither avoids nor pursues intensely. As a result, he achieves ataraxia. This is very Buddhist. Indeed, what happened to the skeptic is just like what is told, or Stoic even. Indeed, what happened to the skeptic is just like what is told of Apelles the painter. For it is said that once upon a time, when he was painting a horse and wished to depict the horse's froth, he failed so completely that he gave up and threw his sponge at the picture, the sponge on which he used to wipe the paints from his brush, and that in striking the picture, the sponge produced the desired effect. So too, the skeptics were hoping to achieve ataraxia by resolving the anomaly of phenomena and noumena, and being unable to do this, they suspended judgment. But then, by chance, as it were, when they were suspending judgment, the ataraxia followed, as a shadow follows the body. We do not suppose, of course, that the skeptic is wholly untroubled, but we do say that he is troubled only by things unavoidable. For we agree that sometimes he is cold and thirsty and has various feelings like those. But even in such cases, where ordinary people are affected by two circumstances, namely by the pate themselves and not less by it seeming that these conditions are by nature bad, the skeptic, by eliminating the additional belief that all things are naturally bad, gets off more moderately here as well. Because of this, we say that as regards belief, the skeptic's goal is ataraxia. But in regards to things unavoidable, it is having moderate pate. But some notable skeptics have added suspension of judgment during investigations to these.
Yeah, I guess what he means by patha, it's kind of mindset, right? And ataraxia, it's also mindset. What's the difference? What do you think is the difference between ataraxia and patha?
Well, I don't know what pate is exactly. I think it's passion or something similar to passion. Ataraxia is, like we said, like the state of nirvana for the skeptic. So here he actually describes how one achieves ataraxia. But the person who takes no position as to what is by nature good or bad, neither avoids nor pursues. So here, really, this is the trick, so to speak.
Yeah, so the idea is just don't interpret things in this opposite good or bad senses, but just to experience what's going on and describe it. And yeah, I had this question.
I think ataraxia is a consequence of this. You take no position on what is by nature good or bad. You don't pursue things intensively, right? You're always sort of in the middle.
Yeah, I had this question yesterday at the speaking club, and I basically proposed the idea that imagine you have good health, you have lots of money, lots of friends, everybody likes you, but your inner life is kind of not just boring, but you don't have any inner life. So you don't think about anything. You have no thoughts, no ideas. You just engaged in a kind of external life, let's say. And right. The point is, it seems from outside that you're a happy person. So again, everybody likes you, you have good health, but you can talk, you can write about it, you can talk about it, you can share your experience, you may share, but again, it's like too wordy. The second point is, like, imagine that you have a terrible life and you have terrible health, and again, people don't understand you, but at the same time you may describe it so brilliantly that this gives you kind of happiness which you can't achieve just by having all things.
Right.
It's like Stephen Hawking example. So I wanted to discuss Nietzsche, but they brought Stephen Hawking and we discussed Stephen Hawking. So you basically have this terrible disease, you can't walk, you can't do anything, you're sitting in the chair all the time. Right. But right. In the same time, you're kind of brilliant scientist and you do all this, like your spirit basically flies somewhere, beyond the sky. And what's better, like to have this life, to suffer, but you don't, like, the question again, what is, if in terms of a skeptic way,
mm-hmm.
I may say, oh, like one person suffers a lot from bad health and it's like terrible, and we'll basically judge it, we'll say it's bad. But what if this suffering gives you something that other people don't have, and this something gives you an opportunity to develop some qualities of your spirit, whatever, of your mind, develop your language, develop some emotions which are unavailable for people who only live in this called illusion of happiness.
Right. So what's the question? What's the question?
The question was like, what is really the nature of happiness? Is it your physical sensations and having good sensations and good relationship with people, or is it your inner life? Is it your ability to interpret what's going on, or not being attached to what's going on? Not being attached. Yeah, again, I guess there's lots of religious context involved. So it's like for as you mentioned, Buddhism. So there's a very close mindset that you are not attached to anything and you live kind of in your inner world, in your consciousness. And the outer world is not so important. And it's like for Buddhists, it doesn't even exist. I mean, everything outside is just an illusion. And
yeah, it's tricky. Yeah, it's almost the skeptic. There's I agree that there's almost like a religious element to this, because it's all about moderating your passions, but it's instead of talking about it in a mystic way, he's talking about it in a very psychological, intellectual way, but it's a similar idea. And I think it's very the issue of happiness is very complex, and I guess from an intellectual perspective, perhaps the most fundamental question is, the fundamental question, I guess, is how to be happy. But after that, I guess
what to do?
But what the other big question is, happiness, does it come from outside, or does it come from inside?
From inside, right?
Yeah. So, and it's a very interesting question. It's a very interesting question, but I don't know how we go about really answering that question. It's difficult to answer.
Ataraxia.
Well, the skeptic is certainly proposing that it comes from inside, it seems, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a combination of both.
It's also very hard to draw the distinction between outside and inside. Like certainly you may draw.
It's hard, but you certainly can in many ways, right? Because there are certain things, for example, having a comfortable life from a material perspective, that would be an outside reason, right?
Yeah, being a shallow person, like having comfortable life, but being a shallow person, like having no personality, like no real rich intellectual experience, or something like that.
And that would be a contrast, right? It's a contrast between you have a good position outside of yourself, but you have a position that is perhaps not so good inside of yourself. And I don't know. I think for us, because we are drawn to intellectual pursuit, being a shallow person, a stupid person, those are bad qualities. But I'm not.
We shouldn't treat them, right? Like if we take seriously skeptic way,
right?
We can say that being a stupid person is a
bad quality. Bad. Yeah, I guess if you're a true skeptic, you can't really say anything. you can't make any judgments of value. But let's say
you strive for like this intellectual achievements, but you actually can't say like if two different people will pursue like this intellectual path, like they both will reach certain like different results eventually. Right. And if you judge one person and say this person is stupid, and it's better to be another person since he achieved better results, but you actually never know, like maybe it's not so better, because these results may lead to something that you don't see, but some like inner something unpleasant in like this. Again, we look at some.
Well, and that's another aspect of happiness, right? Happiness doesn't exactly mean that not everything leads to happiness, right? I mean, intellectual development doesn't necessarily lead to happiness.
Yes, yeah, that's what I want to say. Yeah.
So yeah, like for example, someone like Nietzsche, it's hard to make the argument that he was a happy person from what we understand of Nietzsche. But he was someone who achieved a high degree of intellectual development. But Nietzsche is an example of how both things don't necessarily go together.
Yeah, but see, he suffered a lot, like during his like second stage of his life,
Right.
and he developed kind of this magnanimous spirit. So he didn't complain about his suffering. He did exactly the opposite. So his life was like terrible health, no, no women, no recognition from his contemporary philosophers, and in the same time he praises he admires life. He writes like he confirms, this, like Schopenhauer, for example, had the opposite extreme. So he was like happy, and his life was, he was admired later in life, but he was writing like he was a pessimist. And Nietzsche, he turned to the optimistic side, saying like even if I suffer, it doesn't matter since my spirit is stronger. And he identified himself with his spirit rather than with his suffering body.
Yeah.
And he could produce.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point.
And he could produce such amazing literature, like writing. He was talking about his, writing, especially in his latest works, like Ecce Homo, where he writes like, these books are going to be read like 100, 200,000 years after my death. So I basically
and he saved was right.
I saved my spirit, and it's going to have an impact on humanity, and doesn't matter that my body like suffers and dies. Like I'm so happy since I know, like, I did something magnificent, and it's gonna outshine everything else.
Right. It's interesting. The skeptic readings are interesting to develop different perspective on things.
It certainly gives some food for thought.
Yes.
Right. So it's not just gives. It doesn't tell you like this is what it is, and you have to believe in this. Because this is like a kind of tricky way to look at philosophy and at different ideas and at the world, like kind of interesting worldview. So if you just take it all, you don't learn anything. So you have to do a certain intellectual work on your own to understand skepticism. You have to take some theory and refute.
It's a weird thing to write about skepticism. This book is a kind of a bizarre book because it's counterintuitive. Most books are dogmatic. That's sort of the nature of a book. A book is setting down some principles for you, and that's why they write them in the first place, because they want to codify their opinions and they want to present them to you and convince you in some way that those opinions are right. So every book in a sense is dogmatic. Well, I mean, if it's a story, it's not, but that's a different kind of book. I'm talking about books that
philosophy.
Yeah, philosophy and all sorts of knowledge. Anything that anything that is not a fiction book. So books are dogmatic. That's what books are, in the sense that the skeptic is talking about dogma, right? So all books are dogmatic, really. And he's writing a book that is the opposite, so it's very counterintuitive. He's basically saying all books are wrong.
Yeah, and his book as well.
And his book as well, in a sense. Yeah. So it's a very weird book. It's a very weird book, yeah.
But it's interesting what we are going to say when we get to the end of this book. Since I remember. Like I even have
in a couple of years from now.
Yeah, I may just if you want I may share with you some notes which I made reading it in 2015. They are made in Russian, and I quickly read the book and made like maybe 5-10 notes. And basically, as far as I remember now, it was something like the first day I was reading and it was stupid and boring and I didn't like it too much. But the second day I started understanding something, and then like the third day when I read, like maybe not the third, maybe after the week when I read the entire like 2 volumes, I was writing, wow, that's like the most brilliant thing which I ever read, even though its beginning is kind of weird and it's hard to understand, and the language itself is also confusing. But eventually, yeah, I may send you, like, you know, you may, I wouldn't translate, you may use a Google Translator, and
Yes.
you know,
Okay,
to check out if you'd like.
that's cool. Yeah. All right, man. I gotta go because I gotta do my stuff. But it
All
was
right.
it
All
was
right. So it
it
was
was
nice
fun.
conversation.
It was a fun conversation. And yeah, I'll hopefully this week we'll do some
Artificial
later on
intelligence.
a conversation on artificial intelligence on Friday, and that should be interesting. You let me know if you come up with like some questions. I'll have to come up with some questions for artificial intelligence because it's too, maybe it's too broad, you know. So
Yeah, I had some questions about intelligence. I guess they may be also used for artificial intelligence. Yeah, but I'll write something beforehand, and
okay.
you know,
Sounds
to
good.
put to it.
Are you still covering consciousness in your
No,
discussion?
it's this week. It's prejudices.
Prejudices. Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. That should be interesting.
The first chapter of Beyond Good and Evil is prejudices of philosophers, and now I'm working on this first chapter.
Okay.
And I just choose topics which help me to understand the book.
That's good. That makes sense. It's your new Bible, Beyond Good and Evil.
Not Bible, just I want to see how far I can go just by doing this studying stream. Is it possible for me to get through the entire book? Well, I hope I will do that eventually, but how much time is going to take? I can't do it, I have some intellectual tiredness, exhaustion, so I can do it every day. I thought when I started, I was thinking, oh man, I can do it 5 hours every day. Like it's not a big deal. But then I started doing that, and after 3 days, I have some inner resistance. So I basically forbid myself to continue and try to.
That makes sense. In a little bit, I'm actually gonna watch the Russia game. Are you gonna watch it? Probably not.
What, the Russia game?
Yeah, Russia's gonna play Denmark today.
Oh no, I don't have time for that. I don't.
I'm gonna watch in a little bit. I'm gonna watch probably, I don't know, maybe the Netherlands or Ukraine versus Austria. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, I'm gonna watch Russia Denmark.
All right. So you'll tell me next time how they will play.
I'll tell you next time. I'll give you the Euro Cup updates.
Okay.
Well, Russia, in order for Russia to go through, they need to win today. So it's and if not, they'll be out.
I wish them good luck.
Okay. Like you really care, right?
No, I don't care, but it's just a polite way of saying something.
All right, Vladimir. I'll talk to you.